Hello everybody, it's Andy Nolch here again with another knowledge report, and today's one is all about LRH's discoveries. This is a top 10 of LRH's best discoveries because he's got a lot of discoveries. He became aware of a lot of things and he put it out there, the information out there, and he put it into the religion of Scientology. And it's, wow. He's got some great discoveries. So this is a top 10. And I was actually going to go with the top 5. But then when I came together with a list of what the top ones, I was like, whoa, I need to make it a top 10. Because I couldn't fit into a top 5. So this is really exciting. So if you don't know what Scientology is, this is really great because I'll be explaining things and I won't be using that many Scientology words, and it'll be really simple, and you'll get an understanding of why I am a Scientologist and why people are Scientologists because of this good information. Like, you probably just heard some wacky thing on the internet or on TV and you don't know why people believe in Scientology, and it's not even really belief, it's more you follow Scientology. Like for me, these things aren't beliefs, it's just the truth. You know what I mean? It's like a science of religion. But anyway, and if you're a Scientologist, I think you'll enjoy listening to this as well, and I'm interested in seeing what you think are LRH's best discoveries. So I'll start backwards, alright? Now, number 10, the admin technology. So when I say admin technology, I mean we call it in Scientology tech, but it's the information on administration, like in a business. So it's like how to do all the paperwork in a business, like how to start a business, how to grow a business. That's like, the administration side of it. And L. Ron Hubbard came up with the org board, like the organizing board, like how to set up a whole organization, and you have this department here and this department here, like if you're starting up a big company, and you can apply it to any company no matter what they do. So that's what's really cool about it. So it's like a whole organizing board, and you can just, whatever you're selling, it's just here, like this division here deals with communications, this division here deals with sales, this division here deals with like making the product, and it's really great, the org board. And he has he defines lots of business administration technologies in that, and so a lot of people who are Scientologists, what's great about that is that they learn about this business administration stuff and then they apply it to their lives and to their businesses, and they end up being successful. And so that's why, compared to other religions, Scientologists are quite successful, because if you actually look at the number of Scientologists out there, it's not a huge number. Like it's not even a minority group. Like it's not like Jews or Buddhists or Christians or whatever. Like they have a lot of followers, like huge amount. But Scientology has because it hasn't gotten out there yet because it's a new religion, it has a small following, but the following are like really successful, and it's like a small guy that packs a big punch in a fight. So it stands out. Because there's heaps of religions out there, but you just don't hear about them, but people have heard about Scientology, even though it doesn't have a huge amount of followers yet. You got the success of like Tom Cruise, and there's other there's some billionaires who are Scientologists, and this is partially the reason why. Like there's Grant Cardone, who's a Scientologist, and he applies the business administration technology. So it works, and then but I just want to say, because some people might think that the business administration doesn't work, and that's because people are doing it wrong. So I've found it when I read the business administration technology, the admin tech, when I read it and I think with it and I apply it to my business in like an intelligent, common sense sort of way, not like a literal, like I'm following this exactly as it says. Like for example, L. Ron Hubbard talks about sending out lots of letters to your customers. Obviously, you know, email is the way to go today and stuff. And so, like, you don't think like... Because I saw this when I was involved with the church. I saw it with certain people who would read L. Ron Hubbard and they were concerned about violating... like not following L. Ron Hubbard, which is called KSW. They were concerned about violating that. So they would, like, stupid idiots who would, like, read it and go, oh, I'm going to apply this literally to my business. So they'd send out heaps of letters to people, their customers in their business, and it wouldn't help their business because it's like, hold on, you know, you have to understand this was written in like 1963, but you got to understand the idea of what he's trying to say in that, and then you apply it to your business. So I'm probably what you'd call a common sense Scientologist, and that's how I think people need to be. With all of Scientology, you need to just use common sense and not be an idiot, you know, apply it to your life. Anyway, so the admin tech's great, and it can help businesses expand all that sort of stuff, and it's a really great discovery. So that's number 10. Now, number 9 is the tone scale, and I've talked about this in other videos. The tone scale is just, whoa, it's really interesting. What it says is that people are sort of stuck in different emotions, right? Like, obviously, your emotion changes, right, throughout the day. Like, sometimes someone might be happy or sad or excited. But a lot of the time we'll find people are stuck in certain emotions. So you all might know about, you know, someone who's angry all the time. So they're stuck in that emotion of anger. And so there are other emotions. There's covert hostility. There's apathy, like someone who's depressed, you know, like, so that's more grief. The people who are stuck in grief, L. Ron Hubbard calls it grief. I mean, I would connect it more to like depression. But it's the same sort of idea. So it's like, you know, someone's depressed all the time. They're like, oh, so their tone is grief. And he came up with a scale that plots from 0 is like death, because obviously you got no emotion at death, and above that is apathy, and then like grief, and then like fear, because some people are like nervous and fearful all the time. And then there's anxiety. You might meet someone who's anxious all the time. Then there's like covert hostility, which means that they're like angry, but they don't show it and they hide it. And then there's anger, and then there's just like a bit annoyed, which is like antagonism. Then there's boredom, because some people are like bored all the time. Anyway, and then there's happiness, like at the higher ones. And it's just really, really good to know that, because when you study the scale and stuff, you can then predict people's behavior, and you know who to trust, basically, because the lower ones that are bad emotions. If you're like, let's say you're making a funny TV show, why would you want to hire someone as an actor who's in those lower emotions? Because they're going to bring the energy of the room down. They're not going to make it funnier, you know. So you after you've studied it, let's say you're going and interviewing someone, right, for a job position, and you know the traits, right? Because each tone level has a trait, right? Has a bunch of different traits, like people who are angry. I mean, you can see it in their face, but also like they'll do things like they'll lie, and there's certain people who are fear toned tend to be more skinny, and people who are covert hostility tend to act a certain way. Anyway, so you can look at the traits and you can go, well, I've spoken to this person for 5 minutes now. They seem to be at this tone. And let's say, like I said, the comedy show example. So you'd be like, well, this person's sort of negative, so I don't want to be involved. I don't want them to be involved with the show because I think they're anger tone, so I won't hire them. And then someone else comes in the room and they tick the boxes of being in like the... I'm trying to think of it. Like excited tones. No, sorry, cheerful tones. Sorry, cheerful. So like the cheerful emotion. So you're like, oh, they're ticking all the boxes of being in the cheerful emotion. So you're like, well, yeah, this person will go good on the set and you can trust them. And then, so you hire the person and then you find out in the future, because they were cheerful toned, they didn't do dodgy things like, you know, sleep with your girlfriend or like steal stuff from you, which people who are like lower in covert hostility are more likely to do. So see how it makes your life better? You know what I mean? It's just so helpful. So the tone scale was just a great discovery. And the thing I found so amazing about the tone scale was that just people are stuck in these tones. I was really amazed at covert hostility. I was like, whoa, because I've had covert hostility people just in my environment, because they tend to be attracted towards people like me, and they just cause problems and stuff. So I was like, whoa, this covert hostility thing, whoa. So I knew to avoid those sort of people, and it helped me heaps. And only now, after doing years of Scientology and other practices and stuff, and just getting more positive and healthy and stuff, like seeing a naturopath and that, I'm way stronger and happier, so that like I can like not get affected by those sort of people. But when I first got into Scientology, I had to like totally stay away from those people, because like they were just, their negative comments would just really upset me or whatever. It was really weird. It was bad. But so the tone scale is really, really a big discovery. Now the next one is the suppressive person. So basically, suppressing means to like squash and control. So it's like a squashing and controlling person, like the weighing down, like if they become the president, instead of like having like society free and cool, as a president, they'll pass all these laws and they're like, this is going to happen, this is. So they have society like being controlled, and like they have speed cameras everywhere, and they have rules and regulations. You can't just build a house, you have to do all these things. So the suppressive person, they're just suppressive. Like that's what they do when they get into power, or when they do anything, like whenever they're hanging out with their friend, like they'll say, you shouldn't do that as a career. So they're suppressive, right? And basically, they're evil, like they're no good. So suppressive person is like an evil person. And I know this term has been confused because the Church of Scientology did get a bit corrupted. And what happened was that the church labeled people who weren't suppressive as being suppressive. So these people were trying to improve the church, and they said, oh, you're causing a problem, you're bad, and they labeled them as suppressive, but they made a mistake. They didn't study up on what a suppressive person is properly. So there's a bunch of people out there who are actually saying, oh, I hate the Church of Scientology, and they called me a suppressive person. I'm not a suppressive person. Suppressive person doesn't exist. And they say stuff like that. But no, suppressive person does exist. It's just that it got a bit confused. And a bunch of people who aren't suppressive people got labelled as being suppressive people. So, I just wanted to clear that up. But for me personally, this was really huge, because I was like, hold on, why didn't they tell me this in like primary school? Like my life would have been so different if they just come up to me, right, and said, hey, there's like a small percentage of the population that absolutely hate people. They absolutely hate you and haven't even met you. And they want to just destroy society and ruin the world. So watch out for them. So they don't tell you that in school, but you kind of learn this in Scientology by learning about the suppressive person, and this was just the best advice ever. This sort of information I'm talking about here in this video, this is like, I don't know, if you're waiting at a bus stop and you're talking to like a wise old man, and he just says great advice to you that's like, whoa, that's life-changing. Like, anyway, that's what I'm saying. So you come across these discoveries in Scientology that are like, whoa, they're really life-changing. They just change your life, and they make it way better to know them. So for me, just knowing about the suppressive person was really interesting, because a lot of the time these evil pricks, they don't openly act evil. So you might meet them, or they might be like on TV and you see them as like a politician, and they're putting on like a fake act. They're like con men, and they're pretending to care about society, and you get tricked by them, and then you end up voting for them. It's crazy. Like, I don't want to offend anyone who's Hillary Clinton supporters, but there's a lot of evidence, and a lot of people are saying that she is just a full-blown criminal. She literally, like, as a lawyer, she would, if there was a rapist, right, she would like defend the rapist and get him set free when he should be locked up, and she would enjoy it and laugh about it. And she would also do things like take bribes, and she would like molest kids. Like, I'm not kidding. And they would murder people as well, apparently, the Clintons. Like, I know this stuff sounds wild, but they're really clever con men, and they're usually very successful. And everyone Hubbard said this, they can be really smart and they can be really successful. And they can just be con men. Like, for example, James Randi, he's this guy that, like, debunks spiritual people and psychics and people who can bend spoons with their mind. He apparently debunks them, but he does it in the dodgiest way. And, like, you don't see the behind-the-scenes stuff and the shifty stuff he does. So he'll make a TV show saying, oh, this spoon bender's bullshit. He couldn't bend the spoon. And then you find out that he, like, did something dodgy so the guy couldn't bend the spoon. Or someone who's a really good spoon bender wanted to be on the show to prove that he could bend the spoon with his mind, and James Randi denied him being on the show. So he's also got this $1 million award for anyone who can prove, like, psychic abilities. And he'll only accept people to test people who are like crap, or he'll do it in a crappy way so he knows for sure he'll win, and he will never give away the $1 million award. So for 30 years now, he's never given away his $1 million award because he's dodgy as shit. And then he goes on TV interviews and he goes, psychics are a load of crap. I've had a $1 million award for 30 years now, waiting for a psychic to just prove me wrong and prove that they can actually do these things. And they never come along. And then you find out the backstory in that he never gives anyone a chance to be on his show. And then he tricks society into thinking that they can't do these things. And there's no past lives, and there's no spiritual existence, and there's no other dimensions, and there's no God and all these other things. And he's just a full-blown evil con man. And I know it hasn't came out yet, but it'll probably come out that he's a pedophile. Like, there's so many famous people. Like, there's a bunch of priests that it came out that they were pedophiles, and people wouldn't have thought this 30 years ago, you know what I mean? And then there's people like the top of the pops guy in England, I can't remember his name, but it came out in old age that he was a pedophile, and he was like trusted and working high up in the BBC. And if I said, I would have been making videos 20 years ago, let's say, and I would be saying that, and people would be going, Andy Dolch's crazy in his videos saying that top of the pops guy is a pedophile, and it's just like, well, he is, but it takes years for it to come out. And then there's the Australian guy called Rolf Harris, who it came out when he was an old man. Now it's come out that he's a pedophile as well. And it's like, you know, like they trick people, they con people in. So the average person just sees this nice guy singing on TV and they don't realise that he's like a pedo. You know what I mean? They don't realise he's going to like black magic, satanic rituals on the weekend. Like, I'm not joking, this sort of stuff's true. It's just amazing, right? So L. Ron Hubbard says these things like evil people exist, and then you actually go out into the world and you really look and research things, investigate and ask questions, and you're like, whoa, evil people really do exist. Anyway, so it's really good knowing that, because then you don't vote them in, you don't vote suppressor people in, you avoid them, and all these sorts of things. Now, the next one after this is number 7 of L. Ron Hubbard's top 10 best discoveries. Number 7 is PTS. So this PTS condition, and that stands for potential trouble source, right? And it means that you've got someone who is copying shit from one of these evil people, or just from one of these negative people. Because you know how I mentioned the tone scale earlier, right? How there's different people with different emotions. There are some people who are like angry, and they're not evil, but they've just got anger problems. And they can just yell at someone, and then that person can go PTS, which is potential trouble source, which means they can have accidents, right? That's why it's potential trouble. So if you're around someone who's PTS, they can have accidents and make mistakes, and like get into car accidents, and they can also get colds, which is really interesting. So you have someone, right, who's perfectly healthy, right? Then they start a new job, and they get around this boss that yells at them and is mean to them. And then suddenly, the next week, they have the flu. And it's like, whoa! And it was because of the PTS condition. It was because of this evil boss. If she'd never started working for this boss, she would never have gotten PTS. You know, and she wouldn't have got a cold, is what I'm saying. Because we always think that, like, a cold is caused by, like, you going outside without wearing a jumper or someone sneezing on you, right? But this PTS condition says, no, like, you can go out in the cold and not get sick. And you can actually kind of be around someone who's sick and not get sick. But what gets you sick is if you're being suppressed by one of these negative people. And it's just amazing because, like, you first hear these things when you're studying Scientology, and you're like, oh yeah, the sickness was caused by your mum yelling at you or something like that, and you don't believe it. But then, after being a Scientologist for years, you look at it and you're like, whoa, and you connect the dots, and you're like, yeah, there was, you know, like, you're like, yeah, like, I got sick straight after that person was having a go at me for my career choice, like the next day. And it's amazing, because then you realize more how you have to avoid negative people. And then you don't get sick as often, and it's great. And then, like, also, like, you don't get into accidents. Like, when you know this sort of stuff, it's almost like you don't need insurance for, like, anything. Because you know that, like, when you're getting into a bad situation where you might be PTS, then you leave the situation and then you never have the car accident. Like, it's really weird, but my personal experience with it is that you're going along and then you go PTS because someone yells at you, but what makes you have the mistake, you have the accident, I'm not really sure what makes you actually get sick. Right, but I think I do know that. I think the reason why you get sick is because the person sends you PTS, right? So they yell at you, and that sends you stressed, and that apparently eats up all your vitamin C in your body, right? And then after that, your immune system doesn't work as well, so you're susceptible to catching colds in your environment. Like, I'm not kidding, right? So that's why you tend to get sick straight after, right? But also, when it comes to the accident, so you might get into a car accident or you might slip down the stairs, when you never really slip down the stairs, but suddenly you slip down the stairs, well, what happens is the person yells at you, and then your attention is suddenly not on working. So let's say you're a painter or something, not on working and painting. Your attention's like scared that you're going to make a mistake because of this person. So you're like, okay, better not make a mistake because I'm scared. I feel scared. This person made me feel stressed and scared. I better not make a mistake. And then your mind is distracted and you can't concentrate and you're scared of making a mistake. And then you walk and then you slip and you fall off the stairs. Like, that's what I noticed with when I go PTS or whatever. It's because of, instead of being able to just concentrate on what I'm doing, the person who's suppressing me, it literally distracts me, and I'm like, whoa, and I can feel like my attention's not on just what I'm doing, and I'm worried. And someone who's stressed and worried, they can't drive a car as well. They can't do other things, so they have accidents. So it's just amazing, because it's just like, these are the sort of things you learn in Scientology, and you're like, whoa, it changes your life. Because, you know, you just weed out all these bad people, and then you find out about PTS, and it's just really interesting. Now, number 6 is postulates. Now, what postulates are is it's basically you sit there and you go, I want to be a builder, and I'm going to be a builder. I'm going to plan to be a builder, and I expect to be a builder. That's like a postulate, you know? Like, you think maybe, I want to have a coffee or something. It's like something you plan for the future. So, for example, with me in this YouTube channel that I've got, we're making the videos, my postulate is that it gets lots of views. So I put that there, and as soon as I started making it, well, before I even started making it, I would have had the thought, I want lots of views on this YouTube channel, right? So that's the postulate, right? So L. Ron Hubbard, like, defined, like, a postulate and described it, and he said that he sort of gave you the idea that a postulate can beat the physical universe. So it's like, how can I put it? Just the thought. It's like basically your thoughts create reality, right? It's like being in the Matrix or whatever, and you're like Neo in the Matrix, and it's like you can just think it and you can become this this amazing judo fighter. And it's positive thinking. Donald Trump does this all the time. And he talks about how much he's into positive thinking. So he thinks, I'm going to be the president. Okay? He postulates, I'm going to be the president. And then he worked hard. He put in the effort. And he kept his positive thinking, because positive thinking works. And there's tests about this as well. See, this video, by the way, I'm making is just going to be making Chris Shelton like Scientology haters and skeptics, their minds blown, because I'm talking about here evidences into why I believe in these unusual things. And people like Chris Shelton and that, they don't actually go to look in further into L. Ron Hubbard's information. They just go, a postulate's not possible, that can't really happen, and then they walk off. And they go, it's silly, you can't just think a Big Mac and it will appear on your table. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can't just think a Big Mac and Big Mac will appear here. But your thoughts can change reality. And scientists are doing all these tests that like, I think it's called like quantum physics or something, where they'll have all random number generators. They'll have a machine, right, a computer that randomly generates numbers, right, and they'll get someone to sit there and think like the number 8, and then the machine will start putting out more number 8s. And it's like, whoa! And so it proves positive thinking. It proves like what you put your mind on, you think about, and you postulate, it creates that reality. And this is why people get winners like Donald Trump, because they're constantly in this habit of thinking positive, and they think this business deal is going to be successful, and I'm going to become the next president. They don't think, oh, I'll run for the president, but like I'm going to lose. Like he thinks positive. He's like, no, it's going to go good. I'm going to be a president and stuff. And this is why Scientologists in general are quite successful people, because they know this sort of thing. They know about postulates. They know their mind can create reality. So they think positive, and they go, no, my business is going to be successful. They go, no, this like Tom Cruise is acting in something, like this movie is going to be successful, and he uses this stuff. This is information here is like life hacking. It's like little secret information that you don't know about that can really, it's a game changer that can really make you win in life. So these scientists are discovering, and L. Ron Hubbard was way ahead of his time, because he was talking about this stuff in the 50s and the 60s, but like now they've got like the scientific experiments to show like people's minds can literally change how the random number generators and like other things and stuff. And I've seen someone in person move a spoon with their mind. Like I was testing them out. Like it can happen. Like your thought can somehow make the spoon move. It's amazing. These things are true. Like I don't know. Like I think that when they say Jesus walked on water, for example, I'm believing it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he started a whole religion. People were like, whoa, and blown away by this guy. I mean, he must have been able to like, whatever he did when he was healing people, but think positive and just like make someone be healed. You know what I mean? Like this stuff really exists. Personally, I think it's because we live in like some sort of matrix, and it is like the Neo situation where your mind can manipulate reality. But I can do this. I can't do it that much, but I've definitely done it before. Like where my mind has actually changed reality, right? Like for example, I had an old toothbrush that had bad bristles, and I had the thought like the bristles are going to go good, or like they'll get better, right? And then, like, I don't know if it was a week later or a day later, the bristles were brand new, back to brand new, right? I'm not kidding. And they never got old. I was using to brush my teeth for like 3 years, and they never wore down. That's how strong my thought was. So it was just like, these bristles are going to be perfect. And then they just stayed perfect forever. And I was like, whoa, I don't know how I did it. Like as in, I can't do it all the time. I can't just, think this piece of paper here will be uncrinkled because there's a little crinkle here, and then suddenly it'll be uncrinkled. But you can learn to exercise this ability and use it. And Jesus said, he goes, if you have faith, your faith can like move a mountain. So if like you think and you really believe you can move the mountain, you can move it. So L. Ron Hubbard said a similar thing with his postulates. He said, no, your thought can create reality. And this is why people who are losers are constantly thinking, oh, that girl will reject me, or oh, this business deal will go bad, or oh, that person doesn't like me. And their thoughts are constantly creating that reality for them. And so then the person rejects them, the business deal goes bad, they get into a car accident, all these problems come because they're in a habit of thinking negative. So you've got to think positive. Amazing. Postulates is really, really amazing. I recommend getting into them because it makes life a lot funner. So number 5 is auditing tech. So this is the auditing technology. So because people don't even really know what the word technology means, right? technology is like, there's a technology to cooking good chicken. You know, there's technology to a Big Mac. It's like a way of doing something. There's like this amazing technology, which is like the iPhone. It's like information. So it's auditing technology. So auditing is the processing that you do in Scientology. It's like mental exercises. It's like therapy. And so it's that mental therapy technology, right? So L. Ron Hubbard came up with this bridge and the mental exercises and stuff to do, which can cure some illnesses and can make people happy. And I mentioned earlier the tone scale, where certain people are like low on the tone scale, and even people are like I said with the suppressive people, they're evil. Well, if they do auditing right, you can cure that and you can make them positive and be in the happy level of the tone scale and not be like sad all the time. So people traditionally, especially in the 50s and the 60s, like now people are getting into yoga and they're getting into like unusual funky things, and people are starting to become more spiritual because they're finding out about the truth about life on the internet. But in the 50s and 60s, the internet didn't really exist and the Western world was really traditional. So if someone was doing bad in life, they would just go to see a psychologist, right? Or they'll go to their local church, right? Like their Christian church. And the psychologist would talk to them a bit and the person would feel better. But this auditing tech is, you talk to someone, but it's way more advanced than that, and it like gets that whole bad part of your mind and it throws it down into the toilet bin. You know what I mean? So it's like, have you ever had like a song stuck in your head, or you had like a negative thought like stuck in your head, like, oh, I'm a loser, and you walk around and you're like, oh, I'm a loser, or you're nervous all the time, or you're angry? This auditing tech is all these exercises that you do that get all those problems and stuff and they just throw them away, so that you're just a cool, happy, fine person that walks around. And there's a state that you achieve in Scientology called clear, and that's when you had all this junk, because everyone's got some sort of issue, you know what I mean? But people who are messed up, like drug addicts and all these other sort of things, they have a lot of junk in their trunk. The auditing tech takes all that crap and throws it away, so the person's cool and happy and successful. And this is, again, another reason why Scientologists are more successful in life, because like what I was saying, how Scientologists pack a big punch, like even though there's a small number of them, they do a lot, is because they're not weighed down by these negative emotions. So, for example, you got me, who's a Scientologist, and I've done a lot of Scientology, so I don't feel as depressed anymore, because I used to have depression years ago, right? So I'm able to work and be positive and have fun and be more successful at work. So if I never done Scientology, I would come home from work and I'll be tired and work would have been hard and I'll be depressed and I'll just be like, and then I'd struggle to pay the rent on time and I'll be an unsuccessful person, right? So the auditing tech gets a person happy and positive and gets rid of the junk in their mind that's negative and makes them positive again, so they can be successful in life and really win. And this is what's really interesting when you come across some of these Scientology haters who used to be Scientologists, but they left and they kind of got screwed over a little bit by the church. And they're successful in life after they've left the church. And they're still upset about their bad experience with the church, but they're, on the average, they're pretty successful people. And it's like, yeah, because they've done Scientology in the past, and they don't acknowledge it. They're just like, oh yeah, you know, I'm just like this naturally and stuff like that. And partially it's true, but also, yeah, I want to mention, because I have mentioned here that Scientologists are more successful than the average person, right? And I will mention it because the church was a bit corrupt and wasn't delivering the auditing tech that well. Some of them aren't doing that well. So it's like, you've got a bunch of people who come in and they do Scientology, and some of them, it really improves them, and because they've got good Scientology, good processing and stuff, and they're really successful. And they're like the Tom Cruises, and they're like the movie directors, or like the really successful billionaire businessmen and stuff, like Grant Cardone. So they got Scientology and it really benefited them. But some other people, they came in to do Scientology and they got the screwed up version in the church, and they also ended up volunteering a lot for the church. And even though they got some benefit from Scientology, they had baggage come in and a lot of other problems that made them less successful in life. Like, honestly. So that's why I just wanted to clear that up. Like, because of the church being sort of corrupted, and I think it's getting better though, that's why some Scientologists, like, not all of them are winning, basically, from doing Scientology. It's really complex, the whole story of what happened with Scientology and that. And I made another video on it called, I think, What Happened to the Church of Scientology. I think it was called something like that. And that goes over the whole history of how it got corrupted and everything. It's really interesting. Most people just can't believe it because they can't believe the truth about life because it's so incredible. You know what I mean? But it's just the truth. So the auditing tech is just great. It's helped me heaps. It helps heaps of people. And it's just like, whoa. To me, it really opens your mind up to new ways of thinking. And it's... To me, the auditing tech is kind of like the red pill in the Matrix. So in that Matrix movie where he's like, you know, do you want to find out the truth? You know, you want to find out what's really going on. He goes, take the red pill, the blue pill, which is give up and don't find out the truth, or take the red pill, and he chooses to take the red pill and he finds out the truth about the world, and he's like, whoa! Neo guy's like, whoa! He's like, we're living in like some computer reality Matrix simulated world, what the hell? And he's like, whoa. So to me, the auditing tech and Scientology all in general is like you do it, and over the years you like slowly wake up more and you're like, whoa, what the hell is going on with the world? And you're like, whoa, and it's really amazing. And so it's just incredible because I believe we are in some sort of Matrix type system, and it's just amazing. Like those guys who wrote the Matrix movie, they, I think, were they studied a lot of religions, but they, I think, did something called Landmark, which was made by a Scientologist, but it's not really to do with Scientology, but it's kind of similar self-help sort of stuff. And so that's why I think they were so switched on to what's going on in the world. All right, so the next one, number 4 in L. Ron Hubbard's best discoveries, is the reactive mind. This is huge. This is just, oh my God. Like when I first came across this, I'd sort of been feeling depressed, right? And so I went to see a psychologist, and they talked to me, and they're like, and like it was kind of nice. I had a few sessions, but I could see it was kind of a bit of a waste of time and a bit silly because I could just talk to a friend on the phone for like an hour and sort of feel more positive. Like it was just kind of stupid. The lady was hot, by the way. She was nice. She was hot as well, but but it was just silly. It was just like, what the hell? But then you come across Scientology and they say, oh, you're feeling bad, are you? Well, that's because you got this part of your mind that's full of junk and it's making you feel shit. And if you do this auditing tech, it can get rid of your reactive mind and you can feel happy. And you're like, oh, really interesting. Like, that's what I thought. I was like, wow, yeah, this is Dianetics. And I was like, yeah. Like, what the reactive mind is full of all your bad experiences that you've ever had in your life. So if you won an award, that wouldn't be part of your reactive mind. That would just be part of your normal mind. But if you had been punched in the head in high school or something, that would be part of your reactive mind. And you might notice this with animals who have had like owners that abuse them, or kids who had parents that abuse them. They grow up to be an adult that's like becomes a stripper and has like a drug addiction and emotional problems and ended up having depression and like all these problems and that because they've got all this junk in their trunk. They've got all this junk in their reactive mind, right? So L. Ron Hubbard, which is his great discovery, he said this part of the mind exists. It's a reactive mind that's full of crap and it controls people's behavior. So I'll be walking along, right? And this is before I'd done any Scientology, right? But because I've got a reactive mind, instead of just walking down the street and enjoying it, I'll have like the thought of like a relationship that I'd had, like a breakup with an ex-girlfriend in my head. And it'll distract me and it'll make me feel sad. And I'll be like, can't I just enjoy walking down the street? And so it's like controlling my behavior, you know what I mean? Like it's controlling like what I think. And like if you ever get a song like stuck in your head, it's like from your reactive mind. And And what it does is it controls people's behavior. This is why I was talking about the tone scale and how people act certain ways. Like some people are angry all the time, or some people scared all the time. It's because their reactive mind is telling them to be that way. Like it's a junk in their mind that controls their behavior. So it's a really interesting phenomenon. I know you won't believe it, but you will believe it if you've studied something called PTSD, which is what Army veterans have, right? So they've been through this traumatic experience in the war, and then they come back into everyday life and they're just messed up and they've got PTSD, right? And what happens is, right, this is true. I know, I've spoken to a comedian who had this happen to him, right? He'll be in a shopping centre, right? And he would hear the noise of like a fake gun, right? And it would trigger the memories of when he was in a real battle in the war. And all of a sudden, right, this is where the reactive mind controls your behaviour. All of a sudden, right, I'm not kidding, he would like be beating up all these people in Safeway, and like everyone had to come and take him and drag him away, and he got sent to a psych hospital, right? And he says, you ask him about it, and he goes, oh, all I remember is being in the shops, and that was it. And then he wakes up in a psych hospital, right? Because what happened was that his junk in his reactive mind triggered a memory, and he suddenly had PTSD. Just look into PTSD, and especially if you're like one of these Scientology haters or skeptics who don't believe in Scientology, right? PTSD, the phenomenon of that, right? Look into psychology and ask psychologists about PTSD. That just proves exactly what L. Ron Hubbard's saying, and what Dianetics is saying, and what this reactive mind is saying, because literally this is what happens. Literally, like let's say they got abused by a really mean boss, and he'll beat them up and stuff, and for years, right? And then they have like PTSD from being beaten up by their boss regularly as like a teenager or something, right? And then they suddenly they're at a new job 20 years later, right? And in comes a man, right, who sounds and looks just like their old boss, and suddenly they suddenly like freak out, and they go psychotic. They have a psychotic break, basically. But I mean, this is amazing. Like, I found it amazing, even after doing Scientology and then speaking to this comedian who had this PTSD thing. It was like, whoa! Like, he can literally go into situations, unless he's on heavy medication, so he's like zombied out, right, and in a really good mood. Like, that way he doesn't get triggered, but he can literally be in a shopping centre and get triggered if he hears something that sounds like a bomb go off or something, and he'll be like, and he'll like go and just like suddenly karate chop someone, and he will go into like this robotic behaviour of becoming commando and taking people out. So it's like, what the hell? So it's like your reactive mind has memories in there that can control your behaviour, right? And so we're all not PTSD, and we don't go like as crazy as he does, where you suddenly have a psychotic break and you actually act out certain behaviours. But you can be walking down the street and see someone who like looks like your ex-girlfriend or something, and suddenly just feel sad, and that's like a low version, but it's the same mechanism that's happening. It's your reactive mind being triggered. So L. Ron Hubbard just said, hey, this reactive mind exists, and psychologists call it like a subconscious mind and stuff like that. But it was a really amazing discovery that this crappy part of the mind exists, because then after that he was able to come up with all this therapy to get rid of it. But it was just an amazing discovery, because ever since then I've been doing Scientology, and I've been doing yoga, and I've been doing some other like exercise and all this sort of stuff to like be more positive and happy and get crap out of my mind. And it really is helpful. Like it really makes a difference if you like separate from this reactive mind and you get that crap out of the mind, because then you can walk down the street and not have a song stuck in your head, and you can walk down the street, and if you're an ex-army person, not get triggered by something, you know, or if someone says a negative comment, you don't suddenly get all scared and like, oh, I feel scared, you know what I mean? Like you feel normal. Like someone says a negative comment, like you're ugly or something, and you're like, okay, and you just walk off. Like it's amazing. It's just a really, really great discovery. It was life-changing for me. All right, number 3. The meaning of life is to survive. This was a huge discovery by L. Ron Hubbard. Like, I know other people like Charles Darwin said that, you know, it's like survival of the fittest, but he just said, like, he said it really direct and obvious, L. Ron Hubbard. He just said, the meaning of life is to survive, right? And whatever gives you pleasure helps survival, and whatever gives you pain means that that thing is damaging your survival, so it's stopping you from surviving. So, for example, if you chop off your finger, that'll hurt, and that's not good for survival because you don't have a finger. It doesn't help you, right? But if you get a finger massage, that can help your muscles in your finger, and it can feel nice because it's helping you to survive. And so, like, eating good food makes you feel good and positive and happy, right? Because it's helping you to survive. Now, the only reason why this one gets tricky is because some people enjoy, like, sleeping with lots of prostitutes, or like they enjoy taking drugs, right? And those things actually harm your ability to survive, right? But this is the case with me. They might, in the short term, make you feel more positive and pleasurable, right? Just in the short term. But in the long term, if you keep on doing them, they make you feel really bad and sick, and then you'll end up dying. Like, for example, and SPs do this all the time. Like, they come up with things that, like, suck you in and make you think that you enjoy them and they're survival, but they're not. Like, for example, like a Big Mac burger, right? Because I used to kind of like McDonald's and stuff. Like, I still, like, kind of be, like, addicted to the burger, right? But it's just because they put tons of sugar in there. It's not nutritional value. It's not good for your survival to eat a Big Mac, right? But because you eat and you're like, oh, yeah, this tastes nice because of the sugar, you think it's pleasurable and you think it's good. But it's not good for your survival. It's like a little trick. And if you keep on eating, you end up getting sick and fat and dying, you know. But this, for me, when I came across this, I was like, meaning of life to survive. And I was like, oh, yeah, no wonder why I was, like, never really into drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes. Like, or just doing silly things, like wasting my time socializing all the time. Like, I was like, I never really enjoyed it. I just sort of felt out of place. And I was just like, you know, now I was like, oh, now I know why. Because it wasn't helping my survival. It wasn't helping my survival. But if I go and do stuff like yoga to get healthy, right, and I feel happy and positive after it, that's helping my survival. Or if I go and read a book that, like, educates me a lot about the world, that makes me feel good and positive because it's good for survival, you know? So the meaning of life is to survive. So you've got to do everything to help your survival. So you've got to stop, you've got to cut out all the crap, all the bad things that are not good for survival, and focus on all the good things. And if you do that, this is what it straightens out someone's life massively, straightened out my life. You do all these things that help survival, right? And then you end up just winning, and just, you feel great because you're doing all these things to survive well, and you're feeling positive and all this sort of stuff. Whereas someone else might be smoking heaps of marijuana, just watching TV, eating heaps of Cheezos. And they're, like, unhappy, and they're like, oh, I'm depressed or whatever, you know? So that was a big discovery. The meaning of life is to survive. All right, so we're into the last two. Get excited, all right? So L. Ron Hubbard's top 10 best discoveries. Number 2, the Satan. Now, the Satan is basically like a piece of thought. It's a spirit. It's a soul. So other religions that they call these things other things, and L. Ron Hubbard called it Satan because of, like, the Greek word Satan. He thought it was a more accurate word to describe it, and it is a piece of thought because right now, right, I can think of an apple, and you can't prove whether or not I thought of an apple, but I definitely thought of an apple, and it exists somewhere, like, not in this dimension, but I'm thinking of the apple now, like, it's somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all the physical universe. And that's basically what L. Ron Hubbard is saying with the Satan. It's just like, yeah, you've got your body, but there's a Satan in here. Like, I think it's sitting in this area, right? Or it's sitting in your head, in your brain, but it's a Satan. It's like it's a non-physical thing, right? It's like a spirit, and it exists, right? And he managed to come up with ways to make that spirit leave the body. Which is, people these days are calling it, like, remote viewing or astral walking and stuff like that. But this spirit can leave, like, he came up with a way, right, and these mental exercises, right, like, there's one called, like, book and bottle or whatever, and people go exterior on that, and it's like you just answer questions about a book, then you answer questions about a bottle, and you do it in a certain way, and then suddenly someone's like, oh, I feel like I'm floating up here, and it's like, whoa, what the hell? So, like, when you're new to all this sort of stuff, you're like, whoa, what the hell is a spirit? Like, what the hell? And it's just amazing. Like, it's just like, what the hell? And there are people who have near-death experiences, or they're in, like, surgery in a hospital, and during the surgery, they'll experience this thing where they'll go out of their body and they'll be, like, looking down at their body and going, what the hell? This is wild. And people think they're just hallucinating, right? But it's not a hallucination. Like, and anyway, have you ever really had a dream where, like, you think you're up here in the dream and you're looking down at your head? Like, I don't know about you, I've never had that dream. I had the dream that I'm flying, and I think that's apparently when your Satan's left the body, and in the dream you're flying around the world, right? Or whatever. I've had that sort of situation. Maybe that is exteriorizing or this astral walking or whatever. But I've never been, like, in a room and looked down and, like, looked at my own, like, in the dream or whatever. And, like, it's just a bullshit argument that the skeptics use to say it's just, the person's hallucinating and making it up. Because people who have this ability, because some people can literally, and this is what Scientology does, it helps someone to just be able to do it at will. So they can just be like, okay, I can leave my body and just do it after I've done a lot of Scientology, right? But there are other practices, right, other spiritual stuff where people learn how to do this ability as well. And they leave their body and stuff, and so they'll, as a spirit, they'll go in another room and they'll see, like, an apple, and they'll come back and say there was an apple in that room. So you know that they're not making it up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this has been tested, like, scientifically. Like, the CIA has, like, secretly done tests with psychics and remote viewers and all this sort of stuff. Like, they don't tell anyone, because it's just like, when people discover these amazing things and how to make someone exteriorize, they keep it to themselves. Like, it's such a massive, big thing that they're like, oh, we're going to keep this to ourselves. Like, imagine if you came up with a way to teach people how to predict the future, would you tell everyone, or would you, especially for an evil person, or would you use it yourself just so you can predict all the lottery numbers and make millions of dollars, or make millions of dollars on the share market? You know? So when, like, some of these discoveries are so big that people keep them to themselves. They're so massive, right? That's why the CIA is not talking about it, because it's actually a weapon that they use in the military. It's wild. It's just absolutely wild. But it's the truth. It's just amazing. Like, I thought, oh yeah, what do you mean someone leaves their body? And then, like, you talk to someone who's done it, and you're like, whoa, what the hell, this actually exists? And then apparently L. Ron Hubbard, before he got into Scientology, he had an experience where he accidentally left the body. And then he looked down at his body and he was like, what the hell is going on with life? Like, what? I'm like a spirit that can just, like, leave my body. And I think Buddha talked about this as well, where he was like, oh, I'm looking for nirvana. And, like, I think he was looking to separate from his body, so he's no longer stuck in his body. Because imagine how cool that is, how much freedom you have. And I haven't done incredible amounts of Scientology, so I haven't achieved the ability to just leave my body, but I have slightly come close. But it's a really cool thing to be able to do. And L. Ron Hubbard, you know, managed to work out how to make people leave their body, and he ended up working out that a Satan exists, which is really important. It's so important to tell someone, hey, you're a spirit, you're not a body, because then the big question comes up is, what happens to you when you die? Where do you go? And you'll find out that reincarnation exists, where you come back into a body again and you're born again. Now, it's a huge game changer. These things that Hubbard came up with discovered, it's just huge game changers. You know, it's just a huge thing. It changes everything, because suddenly, instead of, like, just waiting around to die, or instead of not caring about what's going to happen in 100 years' time, suddenly you're like, oh, hold on, maybe I should really look after the government and make sure the government isn't doing crazy shit, so that in 100 years when I'm alive, I'm not, like, I don't have a horrible existence, like, as a slave or something. You know what I mean? Like, you know, maybe I shouldn't steal, because then in 100 years' time, maybe everyone would steal, and I come back and I'm born into, like, a family that's really poor because everyone's stealing in society is crazy. You know what I mean? It makes you suddenly go, hold on, I'm not just alive for the next 50 years, I'm alive forever. So I've got to start planning really far to the future. For me, a huge life changer. It just changed everything. Firstly, it meant that suicide isn't an option. So if you're like, oh, well, maybe it is an option if you're really messed up. You might as well just die and reincarnate again. But if you're you know, if you think, oh, my life will end, because I felt bad when before going to Scientology and I had depression, and I did want to die. I just was like, yeah, I want to die. Like, I feel shit, right? So, knowing what I know now, and I've really looked into it in past lives and the spirit and all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, if I die, then if I kill myself, right, then I'll just come back again and probably at age 20 have the same crap, feel bad again and go, I want to die again, this is horrible. It's just like, it's not a way to handle the problem. It's a stupid way of handling the problem. You just come back again. You know, maybe if you come back and you're like a really great family, but it just changes things, you know, to know that there's an afterlife and that you come back and all these sort of things. It's amazing. Because then you start thinking, you go, oh, well, when Jesus said he came back from death, it's like, maybe he came back as a spirit to visit the disciples. You know what I mean? And that's what it was. Or when people say they see a ghost, it's like, oh, what's a ghost then? Is that just a Thetan? Is that just like a spirit that hasn't gone into a body and has just remained? Big game changer. Big game changer, because you start questioning things and looking into things, and, you know, you start looking into past lives and you find out there's heaps of evidence for it, and Hubbard found heaps of evidence for past lives. And because in the Scientology auditing, you go over memories that you have from your previous lives. So you wake up to who you were in your last life and the lifetime before that and the lifetime before that. It's really interesting. You know what I mean? You find stuff out about yourself and stuff. And he looked into it. So for people who are like, you know, obsessed with evidence, and I'm obsessed with evidence more than anyone. All the stuff I'm talking about here, I have evidence for. You know what I mean? Like, you find out that someone will be doing the Scientology therapy and they'll be going over a memory in the 1800s in a town called blah, 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 blah. And then you go, okay, well, let's look up this town and see if this person, Joe, lived in blah, 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 blah in the 1800s. And then you investigate and you're like, wow, this person really did exist. And you're like, whoa. So this person is a reincarnation of this person from the 1800s. And you're like, whoa, past lives really exist. And it's just a total game changer. Because you start going, well, how come I can't remember my past life? And you start going, well, how come there are these evil pricks like James Randi who are denying that past lives exist and all these sorts of things? Like, you start questioning things and you start going, oh, well, where was I before Earth existed? Or before humans were on Earth? Was I a dog, or was I like on another planet as an alien or something? It's just huge, huge changes. And this is, again, for some people, because the church was a bit corrupted and they'll rip someone off some money or whatever, like they'll make them take out like a loan that they can't afford, and then they'll be like, years later, they'll be like, oh, Scientology's so bad. They don't say the Church of Scientology, which it was. They say Scientology, so everyone thinks that all of Scientology is bad. But they should be more specific, and they should be more specific when they label the specific church as well, instead of just saying, oh, all of Scientology is bad. Those people, right, will, like, it's like, okay, it's bad they got ripped off, and I agree it was totally wrong, right? But at the same time, you were told information, like, about a spirit. You were told information about how your mind can affect objects. These are huge chunks of information, huge life-changing things, and it's like, well, maybe it was, well, yeah, it was kind of bad that I got ripped off, but if you weigh up the pros and the cons, all this information here in this list that you got, it far outweighs the crap that you went through when you're involved with the church. Like, if you really think about this information, this is huge. This is just life-changing. Like, L. Ron Hubbard's like telling you, hey, you know, your mind can create reality. Like, that's a huge, massive thing, you know, and hey, there evil people exist that will, like, be pedophiles if you leave your kid near them or whatever. And that's just huge. You almost can't even put a price on it. You know what I mean? That's why the church can get away with charging a lot for their auditing. And people have realised this. Like, there's the sort of like ex-Scientologist Alan Stanfield, and he used to really hate Scientology when he left it, but then as the years went by, he kind of realised, oh no, Scientology actually really helped me a lot, and it was an amazing experience, and like, yeah, I kind of had a bad experience, but in the long run, it was more beneficial for me. It was like, whoa, what an experience. Like, it really changed my life and made me a new person, and it's just amazing. So, like, you know, the things, L. Ron Hubbard discovering it, and that, I mean, even scientists like these days have like apparently measured the weight of like a body before it's dead, and then the person dies, right? And so the spirit leaves, and then apparently the body weighs a little bit less, or something like 3 milligrams or something. So it's like they have like worked out the weight of a spirit or something. But it's just amazing. It's just amazing. But it exists, right? Now, you ready for L. Ron Hubbard's top 10 best discoveries? The best discovery. Well, can you try and guess it? You know, run through your mind. What is L. Ron Hubbard's best discovery? The number one best discovery. This one's really big. This one is it. This is his best discovery. Number one, the misunderstood word. This is life-changing. I'll tell you why. I couldn't even talk to you, and you wouldn't understand anything I'm saying if you didn't know what words meant. It enables people to communicate amongst each other, right? So you could have some really genius like L. Ron Hubbard or whatever, and if he can't get his writings and his speech across to someone else so they can understand him, no one will find out about the truth. No one can communicate, right? So the misunderstood word, I'll clear this up. Misunderstood word, right, is that when you're studying something or listening to something or watching a TV show or something, people are using words, right? And the words mean something. So apple means the round thing that you eat. Ugly means something that doesn't look good. Happy means someone who's like positive. And so you see, you learn these things as a little kid, what all these words mean, right? And people think, okay, well, I know English then, I know how to read. But the problem is that they don't know what the word arrogant might mean, or they don't know what the word aggrandizement might mean, or they don't know what the word economy might mean, right? So they'll be at school and they'll be reading something, right? And they'll mention the word economy and they won't understand it. And then they'll just be like, oh, I don't want to study this anymore, like it's crap. And it's just because they haven't been understanding it. And that's why when I make these videos, I try and tell you what these Scientology words mean, so that you can actually understand what I'm saying. You see how important words are? Words are a code, right? It's a way of communicating. It's a code, right? And there's something like a dictionary that you look it up and it lets you know what these words mean. So I say something, right? And you either know what the words mean or you don't. And you stop and you look up in a dictionary and then you can understand what I'm trying to say, you know? So if I tell you, the house was far above the fastidious woman's head, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I understand him. Wrong. Do you know what the word fastidious means? You don't understand. Like, you won't know. You know what I mean? I don't even know what the word means. I've looked it up before, but I can't remember. But, like, do you see how you can't quite understand things? Like, do you know how, like, they have it at school, they have, like, English comprehension, right? Which is to check that you understand. Like, do you know what the word comprehend means, for example? It means, like, understand. But, like, that's because I've looked up so many words in the dictionary. Like, when you get into Scientology, one of the first things they do when you go to read anything is they plonk like a simple dictionary next to you, because you can't, in the complex Oxford ones, they have so many difficult words in there. So you look up apple and they'll say blah blah blah, and you're like, what the hell does that word mean? And you have to look up another one, and you go on these chains of looking up all these words. But you need to have a really simple dictionary, right, that says, like, what was it, fastidious. It will describe it in a really simple way where you're not given more words that you don't know what they mean. So Scientology will say, okay, here, you're going to study some Scientology, so here's the thing, and here's the dictionary. And every time you come across a word, make sure, right, if you come across a word you don't know what they mean, make sure you look at this dictionary and find out what it means. Otherwise, you won't understand the sentence, right? And so as a Scientologist, you get this habit of constantly using a dictionary, right? And L. Ron Hubbard, labelled down what the misunderstood word is, which is a word that you don't understand what it means, right, when you're reading. And he came up with all these ways you can look the word up. And the main thing that he said, though, was like, hey, this is real important. And hey, clear this up. Some people have taken this too far. Like, they've become, like, obsessed with looking up words in the dictionary. So, like, they'll look up the word stop and they'll be like, stop. I don't think I understand what stop means. But Hubbard said looking up a word in dictionary is really important, so I have to really take this seriously and look up the word stop. And it's like, dude, you know what the word stop means, right? And just go with the first definition of the dictionary says it's stop, and stop being so crazy, you know what I mean? Like, what the hell? But some people actually take this too far, right? But I understand why Hubbard, said, it's really important, because it's the most important thing. It's the most important thing I've ever done. It is a life changer. Like, if all this information didn't exist, and just the one thing, look up words you don't understand what they mean, the misunderstood word, if just that was Hubbard's discovery, and just that he preached, so he started up orgs around the world and groups saying you have to look up the meaning of words, that alone is incredible and is life-changing. For me, it was life-changing. It shot my IQ right up. And you could almost argue that all the wins I've ever gotten from Scientology are just from looking up words in the dictionary. Because what it means is that all of a sudden, from being not that bright, you suddenly become bright and smart because, you're going to study biology or English at school, and to look up these words in the dictionary that you don't know what they mean. Because sometimes people think they know what a word means, but they don't. They go, yeah, arrogant, yeah, I know what arrogant means. I've read it before. And it's like, yeah, you can read the word arrogant, and you've read it before, but do you actually know what arrogant means? And the person's like, no, I don't. And it's like, whoa. And so when you do Scientology for the first time, you're like, well, there's all these words I don't understand what they mean. And you learn this habit of constantly looking up words. And so when I first started studying Scientology, from there on, I started looking up words in the dictionary. And if I was to read something, I was like, whoa, there's heaps of words I don't know what they mean, especially with Hubbard because he's got a big vocabulary. Or if you're reading university level stuff, these are like people who are good with literature and know a lot of words. So yeah, it's really slow to study. And Hubbard said, it's like, don't worry how long it takes you to read the page. Just make sure you don't go past words that you don't know what they mean. Whereas at school, which is terrible, and education system is shocking, it just says, read this page as fast as you can. Basically that's what it says, because it gives you timelines. And it doesn't say, work at your own pace, but Scientology says, work at your own pace and actually understand each sentence. You're much better off reading only one page and actually understanding it, right? Because you looked up words in the dictionary, as opposed to reading 10 pages and not really understanding it, being all wishy-washy and oh, I think I get it. And, it's just amazing, right? So I think that is L. Ron Hubbard's biggest discovery, because you actually can't receive the auditing tech if you don't clear the words, right? If you don't make sure you know what the words mean that you'll be doing in the session. So in the session, for example, one of them will be saying, one of the mental therapy sessions, right, will be appreciate the wall. Well, if you don't know what the word appreciate means, you can't do it. So before you do any auditing tech, you're actually required to make sure that you know what these words mean, right? So this is why I think, on top of everything, the most important is the misunderstood word, because you couldn't do anything. You couldn't read the Scientology books. You couldn't understand them. We as a human race, if we didn't all speak the same language, right? It's we didn't have a language that we speak, right? We wouldn't understand anything. Do you know what I mean? See how it's really, really important? Basically, the misunderstood word is basically solidifying and putting together language. Like I said, so people can communicate. Scientists can write down stuff about gravity and quantum physics, and doctors can write down stuff about the body, and other people can read it and understand it. And it's because we know what the meaning of words is, right? But it's such an obvious thing. It's just yeah, but I didn't do it. I'll just be I only, before doing Scientology, it was rarely would I look something up in the dictionary, and rarely did I realize, hey, I don't know what a lot of these words mean. And I always wondered why someone could get A+ at school, easily, right? And then I speak to him, right, and I find out as a habit, he wasn't a Scientologist, as a habit, as a kid, he just learnt to look words up in the dictionary, and he was just he was into reading, and he realised if he comes across a word he doesn't know what it means, he should look it up. And I was like, no wonder why you're getting all these A's and shit, because you're reading these essay questions and you can actually understand what the essay question is, whereas I was reading it in high school and I was it would be explain and clarify the blah 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 of the ancient English literature, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't really fully understand the question in the first place, so how could I answer it? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't realise that I'm supposed to look words up in the dictionary. Like, you know, it's just amazing. And like, there's on the school curriculum, I remember there was something where it was like one of the books you had to buy was a dictionary, right? But of course, it would be like this hard Oxford dictionary that you go look up the word in the dictionary and you can't even understand what the definition means, right? And also, they just said, you know, have a dictionary. So, you know, and the smart kids would sit there in class and they're like doing English or whatever, and then they've got a dictionary next to them, and they'll only occasionally look into the dictionary when they come across a really unusual word that's like chuckity-chuckity-bugger. And you're like, what the hell's that word? Because, you know, you come across words where you're like, I've never heard that word before, so you look it up. But they're words that you've heard before, but you have no idea what they mean. And Scientology was like, and L. Ron Hubbard was like, you damn well read, and you're careful with everything you read, and you read slowly, and you make sure you actually understand what you're reading, and you look up a word when you don't know what it means. And it is just, it's it. That's it. If you just, and L. Ron Hubbard said that the misunderstood word stops people from being able to do things. So someone might be wanting to learn about photography. They don't know what lens means, or they don't know what dilation means, or philabida means, right? So they're reading about it and they're like, oh, my photography course is so hard, I'm just struggling, I don't know what, blah, 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 and their mind goes into confusion, and it happens in maths, like, they're like, I don't understand what algorithmic means, and they're like, and they become dumb. But you come across a Scientologist who knows to look words up, and they're studying, and they go, and they look words up, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I understand it. And then they go, yeah, I can understand photography. And I know with me, I can see it in my life since I got into Scientology. It's like, now I can read things fast because I've looked up so many words. I know what the words mean. And I'm not like, whoa, what the hell does this word mean? Like, I read the word inverted, and I'm like, oh, now I know what inverted means. It's like flipped. But years ago, I'd be like, I don't know what inverted means. I don't know what parallel means and stuff. And so now I can actually read fast and don't have to always check the dictionary, right? So it just shoots someone up and brings him into like being like an A student. And also, someone like me who didn't really have a good memory, right? I could be reading shit and I would just forget the definitions of words and stuff. But now that I know to look words up in a dictionary, I'm like, oh, what does that word mean again? Oh, yeah, and I'll look it up and oh, that's what it means, and I'll continue going on. Whereas in the past, I'll just read it and I'll be like, I don't like reading, it's not really my thing. And, you know, now it's like I can read and I can like reading, you know? It's amazing. The biggest one, I did an interview on someone's podcast recently, and I think he said, is there any advice you have, or what's the best bit of information in Scientology? And I said, yeah, seriously listen to me. And I explained what the misunderstood word was, and how if you don't have to become a Scientologist or anything, but if you just apply this to your life and as a habit, study things, right, and look up the meaning of the words, like that, like you're going to be changed forever. And this is the reason why people don't study things and watch documentaries all the time and don't read the Bible and read Scientology and read philosophies and just study and read history and stuff. The reason why people don't do it is because of misunderstood words, because they hit misunderstood words and they're like, oh, like, I don't know, I don't like reading about quantum physics, and then they don't find out all this information. You know what I mean? Like, they can't read a book about past lives because they hit misunderstood words, and they're like, because this is what Hubbard said, and it's true. It's what happens after your mind, like, you get overwhelmed, and you're like reading something, and you're like, blah, 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 and this is when you don't know about misunderstood words, and you're like, blah, blah, and you're like, oh, you know, I'm just feeling tired. Like, actually, one of the reactions is that you feel tired, and you're like, oh, yeah, I don't really want to read that, and you're like, oh, like, I'm sure you guys have experienced this, and I used to experience it as well. Like, I could read things, and they would just put me to sleep, and it was because I had all these misunderstood words. And also it can make you angry as well, because you like read something like, what the hell does this word mean? And it's incredible. So the misunderstood word is my number one most amazing discovery that L. Ron Hubbard had, that I think is the most amazing discovery. And the importance, because I just want to clear this up, because I know people have known to look words up in the dictionary, but like, it completely changed when he said that, you know, sometimes you think you know what the word means, but you don't. So like, you'll be reading a sentence and you won't understand it properly or be confused. And it's because you thought you knew what that word meant, but it was wrong. And you look it up in dictionary and you're like, oh, it meant that other thing, or I thought it meant something else. It basically opens you up to being able to read. Like, I feel like before I got into Scientology, I could only do everyday speech and understand really simple books like Harry Potter, right? But now I can read like Tchaikovsky or like some fancy university thing, because the university, it's ridiculous, because I feel sorry for all these university students because they have to read all this big fancy stuff and only some of them can understand it because they've done a lot of reading and they're aware of these hard words. But a lot of other people are just like, I'm just not that smart. And like, there are people out there who tried hard at school and like all they could ever get is a C, and they're like, oh, I'm dumb, like I've got only give a C. And it's just like, hey, it's because you didn't know about misunderstood words. It's just a huge thing. So that's it. That's his greatest discovery. And I want to mention two other quick things that are notable mentions that didn't make the top 10. And that was some Scientology information about aliens, right? Because that's really huge, because L. Ron Hubbard's saying, you know, hey, aliens exist, right? It changes everything, because you're suddenly like, hey, what? Like, they're out there and they're visiting Earth? Like, hold on, like, why are we not being told about this? And like, they probably have, if they're visiting Earth, they're from far away, so they probably have the most incredible technology. Like, they can cure cancer, like, the click of the fingers. They probably have, like, the best TVs ever, and, like, imagine going on a holiday there. Like, whoa, you know what I mean? Maybe they're way more intelligent than us. Like, maybe they've invented, like, super machines that can make you read super quick, you know what I mean? Like, it's a huge game changer, that one, but it didn't make the list. Like, letting you know the secret about aliens, you know. And then also Earth's corruption, because one of the things he discovered with Scientology is that when he was learning about the suppressive people and evil people, L. Ron Hubbard ended up finding out that Earth is like incredibly corrupt. And all you have to do is watch and listen to a lot of Alex Jones's stuff, because he's exposing the corruption of the world, and heaps of other people who are into conspiracy theories and 9/11 and all that sort of stuff. Like, they're exposing how corrupt the world is. And he discovered this sort of stuff in the 50s and 60s. The world was just incredibly corrupt. Like, it's very, very badly corrupted, right? And that's where all these wars are coming from, and all these illnesses and all this sort of stuff. They're all created, and they're just like, the world is just super corrupt. So that was one of the big discoveries L. Ron Hubbard has, because then you find out about some of this hardcore corruption in the world when you study Scientology, and then you start looking at, and you watch things, and you see what doctors are doing, and you look at drugs and people on the street, and you look at what governments are doing, and then you watch Alex Jones' stuff, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? Like, 9/11 was, like, set up by corrupt people in the government that were, like, wanted to do it as an excuse to start the Iraq war or whatever, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, this is wild. Like, the world is really corrupt. That was a huge discovery. So those last two were just notable mentions. So, I hope you like this video, and hope I explained some things to you, give you some background information about Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's greatest discoveries. And, you know, this is why I'm a Scientologist, because his information is just awesome and it's life-changing. You can't forget it once you find it out. So thanks for listening.